Good afternoon. This is the annual meeting for the Park Acquisition Corporation, the PAC, and it is beginning now. It is Saturday, June the 3rd at 12 o'clock. We're meeting via Zoom, and I'd like to call for approval of the final agenda. Please raise your hand for a second. John Hanson, go ahead. What you're saying is you're approving the agenda.
Yeah, I move to approve the agenda.
A second. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Any comments or any questions about that? John, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to clarify technicality, actually, more than anything, is that the meeting is really an annual membership meeting that is conducted by PAC. So, and members of the park are the members of the of MVMCC. So all residents are members. So this is a residents meeting, but we almost never, in fact, I have never seen a quorum of residents here. So it always goes to a PAC meeting. I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you, sir.
And the agenda does say annual membership meeting. It does not say annual, it does not say PAC board meeting. So
that's right.
So the agenda is correct.
Okay, going forward. Item 2.
No, you have to call for a vote.
Okay, I call for a vote on acceptance of the final agenda as stated. 5-0. Okay. So the second item on the agenda is for public comment for any items not on the agenda, with a 3-minute limit for all comments throughout the meeting. Is there anyone who would wish to speak? Seeing none, we can then move on to new business, which is the seating of the new board of directors. So because it was a white ballot this time, whom was reelected? Steve was reelected and Joan Cervisi was elected. Joan, welcome to the board. Joan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? I don't really know you that well, so would you like to just introduce yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So my mother is Shirley Forrest, and my husband and I came to live with her 2 years ago when her mobility was declining and she needed some help. So since she's been in this park 40 years, I have been around the park, you know, off and on over those 40 years, and truly enjoying myself. My husband and I are both enjoying ourselves. I have 3 children, all live in Southern California. My husband has 2 children from a previous marriage, one in Arizona and one in New York. So we do travel seeing them, as well as going on various walking adventures and things. So right now I'm in Southern California with a couple of my grandkids.
Very nice. Okay, well, welcome to the PAC board and look forward to working with you.
May I speak?
Yeah, sure, Kelly.
I would like to publicly acknowledge the work that Vicki Waddell has done on her term. I am not sure whether she's on this call, but she's been a faithful board member. I don't think she's ever missed a meeting. And so I just wanted to thank Vicki for her service, and also welcome Joan, and say that Joan has, just in her short time living here, contributed to MVest quite a bit, and has involved herself. She's been a bartender at Marval activities and has just jumped right into to be a part of the park. And so I want to give her an extra special welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, again, thanks for your participation, Joan. Let's move on and elect the new officers for the PAC board. I'd like to start with the president. So can I have a nomination for the office of president?
I
John
nominate
Hanson.
Jay Shilfer.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Joan, thank you. Is there any other nomination for the office of president? All those in favor of Jay Shelfer being the president, I shouldn't vote. 4-0. Thank you very much for your vote of confidence. Second of all, I'd like to call for the election of the vice president.
I nominate. Pardon me. I nominate.
Wait. Can I recognize you, Carol Joy? I just want to recognize you.
Do you recognize me?
Yes, please. Yes, Carol Joy, go ahead.
I nominate John Hanson.
Okay, may I have a second for that nomination? Steve? Steve seconded it. Do we have any other nominations for the office of vice president? All those in favor of having John Hanson continue as vice president for this term? 4-0, thank you. And now for the office of treasurer of the PAC board. I'd call for nominations for the office of treasurer. John Hanson.
I nominate Stephen Plocher.
I second that nomination. Is there any other nominees for the office of treasurer? Seeing none, vote for having Steve continue on as treasurer of the PAC board, 4-0. And for treasurer of the PAC board, not treasurer, secretary of the PAC board, have a nominee for treasurer. I mean, Secretary John Hanson.
For secretary, I nominate Carol Joy Harris.
I second that nomination. Is there any other candidates? Seeing none, we have a vote for continuing Carol Joy Harris as the secretary of the PAC board, 4-0. Thank you very much, Carol, for your continued service.
Carol Joy.
Carol Joy.
How about just Joy?
Okay, and let's just reaffirm the committee positions as well. For the finance committee, currently it's myself and Steve Plocher. Have a nomination for that? John Hanson?
Yes, I would like to move that we continue with the current finance committee.
So that would be myself and Steve Plocher. Any other candidates for that? You have a call for a vote. Everybody agree that they'll continue on? So 5-0. MVest. John Hanson, I believe, is the chair of that. Is there a second chair for that, John? Okay. So can I have a nominee for the chairman of the MVest committee?
I nominate John Hanson.
I'll second that. Any other nomination? Seeing none, all vote in favor of continuing John as the chair of that committee. Thank you very much. And now project planning. Project planning for going forward, basically working with Matt and the PAC board and the city to determine and execute various projects going forward for the park. I think these two committees are going to be very important going forward. Both the finance committee to finance these projects and the project committee to work out a schedule when they should be in fact begun So, Carol Joy?
Before we do that, may I suggest that these two committees, although the way you just described them, they overlap, I think that it's duplicative. And I would make a motion to consolidate those and have, because for instance, the thing that we're working on now with the city, which has been called the long-term sustainability of the park, is really headed by the two people who met with Matt, that and Chris Blanc, that and finance people, that being Jay and Steve Ploker, who are the people on the finance committee, the way I understand it. So I don't understand why we need a separate committee to do projects, because the projects are predicated on the budget every year, and that is determined by the finance committee every year, and has included Jay as president.
We should continue to talk about this. John Hanson?
Yeah, I would say that I understand what Carol Joy is saying, but I sort of disagree in that, you know, what I notice of what's been happening lately, you know, like by increasing rents by 5% before we have before we have the budget really to support that. I would say that the same thing goes with projects and finances, that finances really are not, that's the tail of the dog, not the dog. The project is the dog, and I don't see having a tail wag the dog. So in other words, if something needs to be done that defines the project, then comes paying for it. So I see them as two different things.
May I?
Wait, no, hold on, Carol. Steve, do you want to weigh in on this?
You're muted, Steve.
I think I understand what Carol Joy is saying, and it sort of makes sense, but I think it complicates it a bit because it means more people have to work together. So I actually think the separation simplifies things. That's my opinion.
Okay, I would like to weigh in before we go around for a second round of comments, and that is that the way I see it happening is that we have to work very closely. The project planning committee has to work very closely with Matt and whatever consultants that we have information from to determine the necessity to undertake any particular project in the park. Subsequent to that is when we then seek the approval of the city overriding point person to in fact do this. And then from there, we have to work out how we're going to finance this out of our reserves, out of new borrowings, or different ways of increasing the amount of revenue needed to actually accomplish the project. So I tend to agree with both John and Steve that we have to keep it separate, and each one of them has a vital input into how things are running. But it's not until actually the projects are put on the table that we have to deal with the budgeting and the financing for those projects. So I think we've got it in the proper order now. Carol Joy, you want to add something?
May I respond? Yeah, I want to give an example. I think to be fiscally prudent, you have to be able to afford something first. You don't just say, oh, you know, I need a new dress, or I need a new pipe, or a new street, or whatever, and just do it. It's predicated first on the finances. And I'll give the example of the workshop that my husband, Bill Davis, and I sat through, of the city council members each giving an amount that they were voting for each line item in their budget. It went on forever. And Tim, when it came to a certain program that the city has been doing, Tim O'Connor voted 0. Pat Eklund looked over at him, and when it was her turn to speak, said basically, what do you have against this program? And he said, nothing. It's a great program. I love it. I have experience with it. Da, da, da. We can't afford it. So I think that budget comes first, and then you figure out, okay, can we afford it, and where is it in the budget? Just like you were saying, John, but Jay, but you know, I'm outvoted here, so I just wanted to say what I think would streamline it, but you're disagreeing, so fine.
Anyone else want to weigh in, Steve?
I don't. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with Carol Joy, but quite often the concept for the need of something comes prior to figuring out how to pay for it. I want a new car. Oh, do we have the money? No. Well, we could borrow the money. We could borrow it from my sister. We could borrow it from a bank. The dealership will give us a loan. So the order of those often varies. As far as our relationship with the city, and this is important for residents who might be watching, we don't really do this. We don't find the money. We don't plan and execute the projects. The city invites our opinion and by agreement needs our opinion to go forward with things. But that's the extent of our participation. We give them our opinion, often based on our own meetings and research, but it's our opinion. They take care of the financing, the payment, the execution of these big projects. We like to be engaged and part of it, but it's not actually our job to do those things.
And carrying along with that, the idea going forward, Marin Valley Mobile Country Club has a yearly operation budget, which maintains the infrastructure that enables people to rent their home space and live here and enjoy the amenities. What happens is that during the course of the year, management has to oversee all of the infrastructure and all of supplying all the needs for that. And during that time, it anticipates what things have to happen in order to maintain the health and safety of the community, and planning how those features are going to be incorporated into the budget going forward and maintaining the infrastructure going forward is a function of the management and the consultants, and also input from the PAC board, telling the management what they feel needs to be done, or what the priorities are. Then that information is taken in conjunction to the city to determine whether those projects are feasible, whether they're financially feasible, and when they should be done. And that is how the finance department or a committee of the PAC can put input into that procedure. So I still see it as being very separate, in the sense that the project committee working closely with the management and with the city to determine what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. And then the finance group working with the city to find out how we're going to finance it, either through borrowings or rent increases or whatever. So I think I see them as two separate functions, and I agree with Steve, to try and have those two going on at the same time, I think would be too confusing. So I'm all in favor of keeping them separate. John Hanson.
Yeah, there one other factor that should be in there, I think, and is not something the city is not addressing, and we aren't addressing adequately either, is has more to do actually with what Carol Joy said and about finances, financial considerations a priori on projects. But it has more to do with the fact that this is a low-income community. And when we talk about projects and finances, that needs to be considered. So in other words, the go-to action from by the city is to raise rents. Well, with some people in the community, that's fine, doesn't make a big difference. With others, it makes a huge difference. And that has not been amplified in the ears of the city. And so what it means to me is that it doesn't mean we don't do projects or that we don't use we don't accumulate a reserve, but it tells me that we have to look into other resources for financing. And but still, I think what comes first is considering what needs to be done. And then how we pay for it is we need to consider more than just raising rents. I would say raise rents as at the end of the line, the last consideration, not the first. That let's look at soft money, let's look at bank loans, let's look at those possibilities, and we have plenty of time, we have years, and we can rearrange our whole budget and the way the whole budget is done to get everything done and to also, keep our costs for the residents in a reasonable range and something that is affordable to low-income people. If we don't, then what we're doing is just making more low-income homeless people.
Thank you, John. Joan, I see your hand raised.
You're muted.
I
Upper-
keep hearing the words low income community. And I'm wondering when someone goes to buy one of the mobile homes here in the park, are their finances looked at and do they have to meet a certain financial criteria
Yes,
in order to come into the park?
No. Yes,
Because I say that because my husband and I, during this 2-year period, were thinking of buying a mobile home here within the park and talk with Matt about that. Nobody ever asked us what our finances were, or are you under such and such, income?
thank
May
you,
I
Joan.
re- yeah. May I respond quickly? Yes.
Yes, yes, Carol Joy, please
Thank you.
respond quickly.
If you had bought one, your finances would have been asked about at that point. But you didn't, so they weren't. And then in regards to this being a low-income community, the whole community is not income. There are a certain number of spaces that we are required legally to reserve for very low-income residents, a certain number of spaces for low income, and a certain number for moderate income. That does not mean that the entire park is low income. We talk about it as being a low income community because so many of the residents here are low income in those 3 categories, and because the number of spaces that are required for those categories are way larger than for a regular.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol Joy. John Hanson.
Yes, well, that exactly amplifies my point, is that we don't have a good plan for that. How do we maintain low income? And the thing is that, yeah, there's low income, there's moderate income, and there's people that probably are beyond that. But when it comes to rent, all rents have to go up by the same percentage. We can't just increase rents on the people with money and not increase rents. We can't adjust rents differentially. So whatever we do, it's like the tide that floats all boats. We have to raise the rent equivalently across the board. So if we're raising rents at all, we're raising rents on the low-income people. They're the ones that feel it the most. Even a $10 increase in rent is very significant for the very low income.
Thank you, John. It might be just a good point, Joan, to just acquaint you with the background a little bit. Marin Valley Mobile Country Club is a enterprise fund under the mantle of the city of Nevada. It operates financially completely separate from the city of Nevada, and the income generated by the rents are the income for that enterprise, and they need to be used entirely for the upkeep of the project. That project for low and low moderate income is a particular percentage of the homes in MVMCC have to be of that particular income. So when you initially purchase to move in, you sign a declaration asserting what your yearly income is. And if that income falls within that, it then fits into that category of which that ratio has to be maintained. In other words, a certain percentage of the 315 units have to be for low and low moderate income. And that amount of houses, or that amount of families are maintained in a report and given to the city periodically to attest to the fact that it is for low and low moderate income. But as Carol Joy has intimated, not everyone has to fit into that category.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Mhm.
May I suggest that we are very far from what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be on nominating somebody to be the project planning, and we're like way off that. Can we please get back to that?
Yeah, I'm all for that. So project planning, the nomination is for myself and John Hanson to be on that committee. And seeing no others, may we call for a vote? All in favor of those two? Okay, so again, 5-0, so that's it. So now the last one is the 2x2 committee. And this is a committee that regularly meets with the city 4 times a year to go over whatever is on the table. And myself and Carol Joy, especially when the rules and regulations were present as a main focal point, dealt with that. And Carol Joy and Serena really helped manage getting the rules and regs to the point where they are right now, back with Chris Blanc looking at his input before it comes back to us. So going forward, I think either myself or John Hanson or Steve, because of the need for project planning and financing, should meet regularly with the city. And I want to thank personally Carol Joy for all the work she did on the 2x2, for not only the work she did on the R&Rs, but for just keeping everything running smoothly.
Are
So,
you calling for nominations?
yes,
You're talking and we haven't, you're saying.
I'm giving some background into whom I think should be on that committee. May I call for nominations for that committee? 2 people.
Yeah,
Carol Joy.
I nominate myself as one of the 2 people. What, can we do it one at a time? Or, I mean,
I don't know.
I want
I'll take that you wanted to
Okay,
you nominate yourself. You
I
nominate
do,
yourself.
and you got to talk about who you think, you got to say
Yeah.
why you thought so. I would like to say why I think I should continue,
Please.
not just because of the rules and regulations, but because, and you know this better than anyone, Jay, during the 2x2 meetings, I'm fierce. I hold their feet to the fire. I'm blunt and not impolite, I don't think, but I think that I'm a very, I I'm a fighter for the kinds of things John is talking about. I was there till midnight talking by myself to the city council on behalf of the residents here. And I think I saved us almost 6% apiece. So everybody in the park should be thanking me for saving them another rent increase that was going to go through. It was being hammered through by Chris Blunk and Adam McGill. So I think that it's very important that I continue to be on the 2x2.
You can have other nominations for the 2x2. I would nominate John Hanson.
Who's on it at the moment?
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Who is on the 2x2 at the moment?
Myself and Carol Joy Harris.
Okay, so I nominated myself. I would like to make another nomination, and that is Steve Plocher. So now we have 3 nominations: Steve, Carol Joy, and John Hanson.
Okay, John Hanson.
I would nominate Jay.
Okay, we have 4.
Question.
4. Who's the 4? Jay, John Hanson, Steve Plocher, and Carol Joy Harris.
Me, that's 4.
Okay, so why don't we just vote? Steve, you want to say something?
How often are the 2x2 meetings?
4 times a year.
Okay, so I could do it.
And they last 2.5 hours.
Are they Zoom?
Yes.
They have been. Okay, so I'll call for a vote. How do we regulate that? I guess I'll just call for a vote as they were nominated. Those voting to continue Carol Joy on as a member. 3 votes. Carol, Steve, Carol, and
Carol
John
Joy. God, Jay.
Joy. Carol Joy. Thank you. Okay, second of all, John Hanson. All those in favor of John Hanson being on the committee? John gets 2 votes. Steve Plocher. All those in favor of having Steve on?
5.
4.
Wow.
5.
John, was your hand raised? I
Yes.
didn't see. Okay, 5 for Steve. And lastly, Jay to be on the committee. So 2 votes. So Jay is off. It
was
sounds
3,
like
Steve.
It's what? 3?
Steve, did you vote 3 times?
I guess you can't vote 3 times. Yeah, so no.
So who's voting for Jay? 1, 2. Okay, so the count is 5 for Steve, 2 for John, and 3 for Carol Joy. So the people who are going to be on the 2x2 are Carol Joy and Steve Plocher. Correct? Very good. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the determination for the next PAC board meeting, which is going to be Tuesday, June 6th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And no one seems to have a problem with that. John Hanson.
No, I don't have a problem with that, but I don't know if it's appropriate this time or wait until Tuesday to at least think about the 4th of July is that's the July meeting date, and probably more appropriate if we move that date. HOL is on the next day, and the previous day, Monday, is open.
It's a whole thing.
Well, it's not on the agenda, but we might think about making it the next night. We can't make it the next night because that's HOL, right?
That's why I said
Maybe
HOL is the next night, but Monday is open.
Mo-
As
oh,
far as I
Monday.
know.
But the 4th is celebrated on Monday, isn't it?
No, the 4th of July celebration here at the park, the Margal is on the 4th. It's
On
Tuesday
Tuesday.
the 4th.
Okay.
So, okay, well,
Monday works.
we can't really vote on that, but we can next time,
We can think about it, yeah.
Tuesday. And
Thanks,
for
John.
anyone here who is, I'm sorry, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but if there's any other resident besides a board member who's here and is thinking about coming on Tuesday, that's a very important meeting. Please come and tell all your friends. A couple of weeks ago when we had a meeting, we had almost 50 residents on the Zoom call. That was fantastic. We need that kind of participation. Important things are happening here. So please tune in on Tuesday.
Okay, so we are going to meet next Tuesday, June 6th. And at that time, we can further discuss the meeting in July.
That's right.
So do we have any other business to conduct? I can call for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
A second. Adjourn. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.